Just 2 days ago, I received a letter from a friend of mine who's been out of the organization for some time now. And this is what he wrote. I still struggle through many days to break free from the residual poison from 30 years in the org. It is lessening all the time, but I still have bouts of anxiety about leaving God's organization, even though I no longer believe them to be what they claim. This is a common feeling for most who are doubting the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses and doubting the claims of the organization. There's a deep fear that they may be doing something wrong. Now, where does that fear come from? We were afraid that we were going to lose our salvation if we lose contact with the anointed brothers, if we lose contact with the governing body. Throughout the WatchTower literature, you can find quotes like the following. Now, this is from WatchTower, the 15th of November, 2013. At that time, when the Assyrian attacks, the elders must be absolutely convinced that Jehovah will deliver us. At that time, the life-saving direction that we receive from Jehovah's organization may not appear practical from human standpoint. All of us must be ready to obey any instructions we may receive, whether these appear sound from a strategic or human standpoint or not. Someone make such powerful claims? Jehovah's Witnesses readily prove it from the Bible that they have to obey the governing body. They have to obey the organization in order to stay alive, to gain salvation. Now, which Bible verse would they quote? Now, there's been a change in understanding since 2011. They were appointed in 1919 and not after Jesus resurrected to the heavens. So this is still valid, but starting from 1919. So after Jesus had been resurrected to the heavens, his brothers were appointed to act in his place, substituting for Christ as ambassadors, inviting others to become reconciled to Jehovah God. Our recognizing Christ's leadership involves submission to his brothers. So when I was preparing for this video, I was quite a bit shocked with what I read in this paragraph and other, especially this quote from 2 Corinthians 5:20. I found out that in no other Bible translation you'd find this phrase, substituting for Christ. Now, apostles were ambassadors of Christ. Christ was not there anymore. He was present with his spirit, but as if they spoke through the apostles and they didn't take on his power or authority. However, what the governing body claims, they claim to be substituting for Christ. And this is what happens in the minds and hearts of many Jehovah's Witnesses. When you mention Christ, you go to governing body because they're substituting for Christ. And if you want to be obedient to the Christ, you have to be obedient to them. Not just obedient, as we read in the previous article, blindly obedient. Because upon that obedience depends your salvation. In fact, the governing body claims that they're not equal to apostles. They're higher than the apostles because they were appointed to act in his place, to substitute him. Literally, they read it from their Bibles that have been changed, that they are substituting for Christ. Not only in behalf of the Christ, but they're there instead of him. So when you see governing body, you see the Christ himself. There's an interesting quote from one other WatchTower that was quite shocking as well. Are you willing to gird yourself with holiness of mind, to put on the apron of humility? Are you willing to accept Jehovah's way for salvation? In this 20th century, we have an example of humility, lowliness of mind that is found worldwide. It is in the organization of Jehovah's Witnesses. Why not read on and see how they have humbly conformed to Jehovah's way for salvation? I don't know about you, but this This is outrageous. Boasting of being humble, they're openly claiming that they're lowly, and yet they prove that they're humble by inviting others to admire. This is shocking. And I'd like to read one more. It's from the WatchTower 1990. As Christians, we face up to similar challenges today. We cannot take part in any modern version of idolatry, be it worshipful gestures toward an image or symbol, or the imputing of salvation to a person or an organization. And like the early Christians, we cannot compromise our Christian neutrality. So imputing salvation to an organization, isn't that idolatry? Well, it is, according to this particular WatchTower. So now you understand why fog appears in hearts of Jehovah's Witnesses: fear, obligation, guilt. By misinterpreting series of Bible verses, they were able to disciples go after themselves and take them away from the Christ. Evidently amounts to idolatry. And that's why Jehovah's Witnesses, when they leave Jehovah's Witness organization, they kind of, in minds of others, leave Jehovah. Because Jehovah is his organization. And the only way to break that fear is to look into the Bible verses that they take advantage of by mistakenly applying them, and then see what did Jesus really say, what does the Bible really say about our salvation. Whom should we go to if not to Jesus Christ? No human nor any organization can give us salvation. One of the most important teaching of Jesus that he directed to his disciples was how they should view status, ruling over others. He repeatedly encouraged them not to behave as those who lord it over them, and like the great men who wield authority over them. This must not be the way among you. But whoever wants to become great among you must be your minister, and whoever wants to be first among you must be your slave. Paul foretold that there was going to be a change in behavior of early Christians, and that's when the problems began. Listen carefully to what Acts 20, 29 and 30 say. I know that after my going away, oppressive wolves will enter in among you, and will not treat the flock with tenderness. And from among you yourselves, men will rise and speak twisted things to draw away the disciples after themselves. Paul was not referring to elders that he had personally appointed over Christians in congregations over them. We should obey them and be submissive to them. This is taking away the disciples from Jesus Christ and taking on the authority of Jesus Christ that no elder ever was supposed to gain. They were not supposed to lord it over their flock. So in order to gain control over the flock, they have to introduce twisted things, twisted doctrines, twisted teachings. And that's why it's so important to expose the lies that they were telling. The only way to beat fear is through knowledge. If you're a child and you're afraid of the dark and you're afraid of the monster that's hiding in the closet, you should open the closet and look inside and see that there's no one there. And then you can sleep peacefully. The same way needs to be done by those of us who still cherish fear for leaving Jehovah via leaving Jehovah's organization. Jesus was resurrected. He's still alive. He's leading his disciples through his Holy Spirit. He doesn't need human mediators. He doesn't need a pope. He doesn't need 8 popes in order to rule, because he's powerful enough to rule with his Spirit. So we should be one of those who worship God in spirit and truth. This is the kind of worshipers God is looking for.